Welcome to another edition of Politics Unright. I'm Egberto, Willies, your host. Today, I'm honored to have a good friend of mine, a professor, Dr. John Theis, who is a political science professor at a major college here in Texas. Professor, thank you so kindly for being here on Politics Unright.
Hey, my pleasure, Egberto.
Today, we are going to be discussing freedom. We're going to be discussing what occurred recently in South Korea when martial law was declared and how it applies to what we are going through right now in the United States of America. And there's no one more competent and qualified to discuss this subject than Dr. John Theis. So, Dr. Theis, thank you so kindly for being here with us.
No problem.
John, you're over there in Korea. What are you doing out there? I kind of woke you up early.
So I had a semester of leave that I had accrued. So I decided to come and spend the semester here following up on. So in 2023, I was awarded a Fulbright fellowship and came to Korea and taught for a semester. And I liked it so much that when I had another semester I could take, I decided to come back.
Well, that is great. Well, I want to get right to the punchline. Many people in the United States believe that Donald Trump, the current president of the United States, is marching towards creating a platform to declare martial law or some sort thereof. Now, recently in Korea, last year, in fact, there was a president that kind of followed some of what Donald Trump is doing. And he was summarily rebuffed. Why don't you kind of tell us how South Korea got there and how they mitigated that reality?
So Yoon Suk-yeol was the president. He was elected as the president of the People's Power Party, which is the conservative party here in Korea. And they had midterm elections, and the opposition Democratic Party won a majority of seats in the legislature. And the Democratic Party was not behaving the way the president wanted. So on December 3rd, I woke up in the States with the news that Yoon had declared martial law. And so I watched his talk, his speech, why he was declaring it, and it just echoed all the things. So just a little background, I had grown up in Korea from 1962 to 1980. So I experienced martial law under Park Chung-hee and Chun Doo-hwan, two presidents then. I lived through a coup d'etat in 1979, a lot of pro-democracy protests in the 70s, early 80s. So I had seen presidents declare martial law before, and what Yoon was saying when he declared martial law was simply exactly what Park Chung-hee and Chun Doo-hwan had said before, that there were communist influences in the opposition party. I can understand Yoon's frustration. He was trying to get a budget passed, and the opposition party wouldn't pass the budget that he wanted. And so he basically saw it as a way to get the control of the country that he couldn't have with the legislature in the opposition party hands. So he declared martial law. Literally within an hour, people were in the streets. The National Assembly is on Yeouido Island. It's estimated there were 200,000 to 300,000 people came out. This is now in the middle of the night. Yoon tried to get the military to take over the National Assembly because in South Korea, if a president declares martial law after the experiences that they had, the National Assembly can force him to take back the martial law. So the National Assembly was trying to meet. The place was surrounded by soldiers. A couple 100,000 Koreans came out. And the National Assembly was able to meet. They voted to tell Yoon to get rid of martial law, to undeclare martial law. which Yoon ultimately did about 6 hours after he declared it. But then, of course, there were calls for his impeachment for carrying out an act that was clearly out of bounds.
Right.
I mean, I think, you know some of my work in Kingwood, and the work with deliberative dialogues, the work with public achievement, the various projects that I do are always aimed at getting people left and right working together to solve problems in their community, to talk about issues in their community. That's because I think democracy is really about compromise. And we have to be able to talk to each other to find out where the common ground is, to find out where the compromises can be. And in Korea, the opposition and the ruling party under Yoon, they weren't willing to compromise. And Yoon tried martial law as a way to simply get its power, and it backfired. And so I was actually in Korea last Christmas for about a month when all this was going on, and there were massive protests in the streets, about 200,000 people demanding the impeachment of Yoon. The legislature voted once. They didn't quite get enough votes. Then on the second time, they were able to impeach him. That then sent it to a constitutional court to decide if he would be removed from office. That decision was handed down in January, maybe February. Anyway, in the beginning of the year. And so Yoon was removed, and then they held another presidential election in June, where Lee Jae-myung from the Democratic Party was elected president. Yoon is now facing trial for treason for declaring martial law. When I heard his announcement, I thought there's no way the Korean people are going to stand for this. Remember, they had to fight for democracy, to get democracy from dictators. And sure enough, they didn't. Now, to be clear, there were some pro-Yoon, pro-president protesters. So when the impeachment trials or votes were going on when I was in Korea, there were a couple 100,000 in front of the National Assembly urging impeachment, and there were about 20,000 in another part of Seoul urging Yoon to stay and protesting against impeachment. So it's never monolithic, but the overwhelming number of people supported the impeachment and removal of Yoon for declaring martial law. And I just think Yoon wasn't willing to compromise on the priorities that he had, so he thought martial law was a better way to get what he wanted done. And of course, Yoon had grown up with martial law just like I had, so he thought, I can do this. This is what other people have done.
Now, let's look at parallels now between what occurred in Korea and what is occurring here in the United States. It seems to me like Donald Trump is toying with the idea. He's laying, not necessarily that he's going to do it, but he's laying a foundation that in case he does it, just maybe he hopes it succeeds. Two questions then. Do you think he will do it? Well, three questions, that is. Do you think he will do it? Do you think our own military would consider that a legitimate order? And three, do you think the Americans, the populace at large, has what it takes, as the South Koreans did, to actually save their democracy?
So, one, I don't think he would do it. I think it'll be more subtle. I'm disturbed by him wanting to send National Guard troops into cities over the objection of the governors and the mayors and even the police departments of those states and those cities. That's not a proper role for the federal government. So Portland, LA, Chicago, you and I live in a big city. It's not a crime-infested hellhole. that people who don't live in the big city think cities are. Okay. Crime rates have been going down. I think a lot of that is sort of manufactured to give a justification. And, Trump, the Department of Defense just ordered the state National Guards to create these rapid mobilization deployment forces, 500 people. I'm really more concerned about under the guise of election integrity or keeping elections safe, they post National Guard troops in heavily Democratic areas, have ICE agents there to take away anybody that might happen to not look like me, which is a very effective way of suppressing the vote. And that ends up keeping the House in Democratic or in Republican hands. I think that's the way it'll probably go. Declaring outright martial law would, I think, be a step too far. I think the American people wouldn't stand for it. Now, having said that, America is a much bigger country, and there are a lot of people that just think Donald Trump can do no wrong. And one of the things that I think, so there's a really good book by a political scientist named Murray Edelman, who talked about the symbolic uses of politics. And he said, for some people, politics is about getting things. Okay. So Jeff Bezos wants contracts from the Pentagon for his web service, and Elon Musk wants to sell NASA his services, and Palantir wants to make money from dealing with federal data. So there's, for some people, politics like that is immediate. It's personal, and they behave very rationally. But for most of us, politics is something distant. It doesn't affect our lives directly on a day-to-day basis in the same way. So most people in America are working, are trying to spend time with their family, are engaged in their daily lives, and politics becomes something distant that they participate in once every 2 or 4 years, maybe in a protest here and there. And so politics is not a rational activity, it's emotional, it's about symbols. And Donald Trump is very effectively sold about a third of the American population a set of symbols that he's going to save them from the urban decay and urban blight and the violence in cities. He's going to save them from the illegal immigrant hordes crossing the border to take their jobs and take their benefits from government and access their free health care and all that. And so those are emotional feelings that people have. So I think if Donald Trump does try to do martial law, a large chunk of the American people will come out in the streets. I don't think the military would fire on American citizens. But I also don't think that Donald Trump cares much if citizens go out on the street. You saw his reaction to the No Kings protest, dumping shit on people on his AI video. So that's what he thinks of citizens. And so I think he just hunkered down and waited out and hoped that people have to go back to work and go back to their lives. And, you arrest the instigators and the leaders and hope everybody else goes back. So I'm not sure how it would end up. I think the people would not want to stand for martial law, at least a large percentage of them. But there's a big chunk that would say that's good. That's what we need. These liberals, these leftists need to be put in their place.
Now, ultimately speaking, you talk a little bit about the election. Do you think that ultimately the voter suppression that he's likely to try with both ICE and the Border Patrol and others will fail, or do you think that may actually succeed in letting them hold on to the House?
I think there's a lot of disgust with Trump and his policies. So, but with the gerrymandering, it's going to be close. It's hard to say either way.
Let me tell you, gerrymandering is a two-edged sword. In order to get those other districts, they have to dilute their Republican districts that are already there. In a close election or in an election where Donald Trump is going to inflict a lot of pain on just about every demographic except the rich. And when I say demographic, I'm not talking ethnically necessarily, but class and the wide.
Sure.
Right. Don't you think that this urge to gerrymander Florida, Texas, and Indiana could actually backfire?
It could backfire, especially with a candidate like James Talrico, if he ends up being the Democratic nominee, because he has a very good message to working class.
Right. It's interesting that you brought up Talrico, because a lot of folks are looking at many others, and I have actually come down to believe that the electable Democrat in this race, in this year, in this time, based on his own personal realities, both medically and otherwise, working class medically and otherwise, including a bit of religiosity, it seems to me like he fits Texas like a glove. Your thoughts on that?
I think he does. I mean, I think Talrico's a progressive Christian who provides a counterweight to the Christian nationalism of Abbott and Patrick and so many of these other people in Texas. He gives Christians an alternative view, and that's really important. And you and I have had discussions in the past. I think running as a progressive with a strong message to working class people, that it's bread and butter, and you stay away from the issues of gender identity and those sorts of things. Every human being has a right to basic civil rights, regardless of their gender identity, sexual orientation, or anything. But elections should be fought on the pocketbook issues, the bread and butter issues of the economy, and progressives have a good message on that.
Absolutely so. Well, look, Dr. Theis, I'm going to close it down here on this particular issue. I want to thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right to discuss this most prescient issue.
Well, my pleasure to be here.